Hi, I'm Mercedes Stephenson, and this is the West Bloc: Politics, Perspectives, and Players.
As one important voice for Quebec, we observe that this government might not be worthy of our trust anymore.
That was Bloc Québécois leader Yves-Francois last week, weighing in on the controversy over we. He says if the finance minister, the prime minister, and the prime minister's chief of staff do not resign, the Bloc will do everything in their power to push for a fall election. But how likely is that to really happen? Joining me now to discuss this and more are the Globe and Mail's Ottawa bureau chief, Robert Fife, and here in studio we have Amanda Connolly, who writes for us at globalnews.ca. Bob, a lot of fluster and bluster from the Bloc, but it doesn't seem like for all of the howling by opposition parties, there's any real appetite to go to an election.
Well, Mercedes, I was always under the impression that the Liberals, if they could, would push a late fall election to come off their management of the pandemic. But given the scandal over the We charity, I think that is completely off the table. The opposition parties are not going to defeat this government right now, despite what Mr. Blanchet is doing. The NDP cannot afford to lose any seats. They have no money. They would definitely lose more seats. It seems to me the Conservatives will just have an elected leader. They do need to raise more money, and more importantly, they need to get some policy ideas to contrast themselves with the Liberal government. So I think there will be an election, but it'll probably be next year.
Well, that gives those of us who are still tired from the last one some time to prepare for the next one. But Amanda, we heard a lot this week. There was ongoing testimony. This We scandal continues. What jumped out from you in all of the committee hearings, and there were a lot this week, as well as the House sitting, that viewers at home would want to know in terms of developments on that front?
I think one of the really big takeaways from this week is really the importance of the lobbying registry. Again, you saw through a lot of that testimony at committee, really trying to get to the root of who met who, at what point, what did they discuss, what were the kind of specific details going on here that are causing a lot of questions to be asked about how exactly this played out. And of course, when we saw the We Charity register as lobbyists this week, a lot of those details were, verified in a certain way through the registrations made with the lobby register. And so you do have to look at that and think, you could have had a lot of this proactively disclosed, put out there to address questions that were really being raised. And I think that by having that out there, you could have spent perhaps more time on certain other aspects that people might want to be knowing about, to know more about, and again, I think it really drives home the fact that there is a value here in being proactive.
Bob, there was a lot of questions about not only the Liberal government's future this week, but especially Bill Morneaus. And you broke that story in the Globe and Mail, saying that there has been conflict between the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Minister. His future could be in jeopardy. Tell us a little bit about how that came about.
Well, this has been going on for some time. As we all remember, the Prime Minister having to overrule Mr. Morneaus on the wage subsidy. He had a 10% that went up to 75% when the Prime Minister intervened. The change in legislation where they wanted to keep Parliament, give the Finance Department unlimited taxing authority until 2021, that blew up in their face. The whole ethical scandal involving Mr. Morneaus having to pay back money has hurt the government's credibility, hurt the minister's credibility, upset people in the Prime Minister's office because they didn't know about this. And then that lately they've had a disagreement over the new employment insurance revamping that's coming down. The Prime Minister wants a 2-year freeze for business and Canadians, and Mr. Morneaus is pushing for a 1-year freeze. So they are looking, as they decide on a cabinet shuffle, who can take care of the next phase of the post-pandemic economy. The Prime Minister's not sure that Bill Morneaus was the one. The names being mentioned, of course, is Mark Carney, the former Bank of England, Bank of Canada governor, who would be a major reassurance to the markets if he was to come in. Others, of course, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland and Francois Philippe Champagne, the Foreign Affairs Minister. I've also heard the name of the Treasury Board Secretary, Jean-Yves Duclos.
Bob, how likely do you think it is that Mark Carney jumps back into the political pool at this point? Or into it for the first time, I should say, not back into it. Kind of feels like he's been there a while, but he's been the Bank of Canada, of course, England governor as well.
I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I think they would my discussions with senior officials is that if he wanted the job, he'd have the job. Right now, he's serving as an informal advisor to the Prime Minister. So how would you feel as the Finance Minister if the Prime Minister's got a choice between listening to the Finance Minister or to Mark Carney? I think you would feel a little bit diminished. I just don't know how long Mr. Morneaus can suffer the public humiliation of having his job questioned in this sort of a way. So my sense is that we'll have a good idea by September whether Mr. Morneaus is going to resign on his own to spend more time with his family, Mercedes, or whether he'll be able to hold on to this job. I have a feeling that it's going to be hard for him to do so because they're trying to change the page.
Well, and, you know, Amanda, we heard that the Prime Minister's office has full confidence. Of course, we've heard that from other Prime Minister's offices about other ministers and senior officials before they vanish off the political face of the earth. But one of the other big stories this week that I wanted to talk about with you was the threats against politicians. Catherine McKenna, who is the infrastructure minister we had on the show today, she faced some significant threats. She's faced them under police protection before. So have other politicians. This spans all sides of the spectrum. How have things changed from being critical of politicians' positions to now whether there is actually a potential threat on politicians' lives?
I think that's a really good question to be asking right now. Again, you're looking at kind of the ways that social media comes together here with politics and the way that it's being covered and talked about online. I think that what you're really seeing here is an inability to separate the person from the office and the ideas from the person. And so when you have someone, for example, whose ideas are perhaps more controversial or who are high profile even, individuals who don't support those ideas, who don't think that those are the right direction for the country, they're not necessarily, or not showing a willingness at least, to recognize that the person who is working on those, you know, you can disagree with ideas, but the person is still a person. And I think that's a real danger to politics, to democracy, in any country that wants to have and be able to have civilized discourse going forward. And so this is going to be a big issue it was a big issue in the last election and will certainly be one for any future election that we do have coming up.
Well, I think it's going to be an issue that we unfortunately are going to have to continue to discuss on this show, but we are out of time for today. Thank you both to Bob and Amanda for joining us.